The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nicole Hennessy, Vice President of the Music Business Association. Welcome to our Common Ground webinar series. I'm glad to have you all here today for our presentation by Pandora. But before we start that, let me just a few announcements from Music Biz. So next week, Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m., we'll have our second in a 4-part series of webinars on leadership and how to be a better leader, how to motivate your staffs, and how to, encourage folks to be at their best. That first webinar in the leadership series was a few weeks ago. If you're a Music Biz member, you can find the recording of that webinar on our website under recorded webinars in the events section of the website. But if you didn't see that last webinar, you can either watch it or you don't actually have to have seen that one to understand what's going to be presented in the second series. So again, a leadership webinar, how to motivate your staffs, to be on the series next Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. So check that out at musicbiz.org. Some great announcements, too, have been coming out about our annual conference, Music Biz 2019, that's going to take place in May 5th through the 8th at the JW Marriott in Nashville. We have some great keynotes lined up. Zane Lowe from Apple and Beats One, Paul Rosenberg from Def Jam, as well as some great award winners. BB Rexa and Kane Brown will accept our Breakthrough Artist Awards. Darius Rucker will accept our Humanitarian Award. Our Presidential Award this year will go to Randy Goodman of Sony Nashville. And we have some other great keynote and award announcements coming up. The program lineup has been announced, so if you check out musicbiz2019.com, you'll be able to see all the sessions that we have planned on there. We're still adding speakers every day, so be sure to check back to see who will be showcasing their expertise with you, and also take a moment to look at the registration page. Registration has been open for a while. The hotel rooms are booking up, so if you need a hotel room, do reserve that as soon as possible so that you will be able to stay at the JW at the headquarters hotel. So for today, we have with us Brittany Holloway and Heather Ellis from Pandora to talk to you a little bit about how you can use Pandora's data to grow your business. There is a questions box on your screen. If you have questions for either Brittany or Heather, please feel free to put those into that questions box. They will answer questions at the end of the presentation. So Brittany and Heather, thank you so much for being on the webinar series today. We welcome you. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, turn it over to you, ladies, and I'm here if you need me.
Thanks so much, Nicole. So yes, I am Brittany Holloway, and I am happy to walk all of you through some of the data that we have here at Pandora, as well as introduce you to some of the artist marketing tools that we have. And then I'm going to be passing it over to Heather so she can say hi from our Oakland office.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather Ellis. I manage the artist marketing platform, and I'm going to be telling you guys all about a brand new suite of tools just released and launched this week called Pandora Stories. It's going to be very exciting.
Awesome. So it's going to be great since we'll have the opportunity to make sure that everybody is fully up to speed on all of the tool sets that we've had in our toolkit for a little bit now. Make sure that we really understand what those metrics mean, what we're really looking at when we are looking at the different features that we have in Next Big Sound, and then we'll be able to dive a bit deeper into this new and exciting concept of Pandora Stories, leading us to the questions section at the end. So we'll be happy to take questions across all of those different topics. So with that being said, I want to kick things off and just frame this conversation by telling you about the two main sister platforms that we're going to be talking about today. The first being Next Big Sound, and the second being AMP. So Next Big Sound is where we are going to be talking most about the data available, and Pandora AMP is where we're really going to be talking about the different actions that you can take as far as marketing tools are concerned. So that really leads us to this introduction around next big sound. So once again, this is where you'll really be accessing your data and understanding your audience. So for those of you that may not be aware, next big sound was initially a separate entity and was collecting data for hundreds and thousands of artists across both audio streaming platforms and social platforms. And then in 2015, Pandora acquired Next Big Sound and sort of took us under their wing so that we could be the internal reporting arm for Pandora. So now Next Big Sound is a place that has Pandora data at the forefront, and it's trickled throughout all of the different features, but we do also have the ability to benefit from data sources such as Facebook and Twitter, even Wikipedia, so that you could track awareness for a given artist. So that sort of leads us to where we are today. And since Pandora is a slightly unique beast in the sense that it operates a little bit differently than some of the other DSPs, I wanted to make sure that we all had a decent understanding of what some of the metrics we're tracking actually mean. So here are just some of the powerful metrics and analytics that we have accessible to us, which end up leading us to getting a lot of insight and taking action. So in that first column, you notice we have Pandora artist station ads and Pandora track station ads. So for the many people that use Pandora radio listening experience, they can start that listening experience by just typing in one artist name or even typing in one song name. And through that, they're able to launch this experience that's based on that initial seed. So for us, it's a really good indicator of engagement for any given artist if we see a listener take that action, because we know that they're letting us know, we like this artist, we like this song. So when we talk about liking an artist or liking a song, that is a perfect segue to the center column, which is Pandora thumbs up. So as a listener on Pandora, many of you may already know this as a Pandora listener, but as you are listening to any given station, you have the ability to thumb up a track that you like. So what's really cool about this feature is it will actually distinguish my Beyonce station from Heather's Beyonce station, because we have some data around, what music makes the most sense on that kind of station. We are actually able to build a layer on top of that, which says, okay, based on the preferences that Brittany has given us around what she likes and the specific songs we've served her that she's thumbed up, we can actually personalize that experience a little bit more. But once again, thumbs up are just another indication that we served a good song to a listener at the right time. And that listener is telling us, hey, we like this song, we like this artist, and we want to hear more of it. So lastly, moving to the third column, these are three metrics that I want to make sure that we have crystal clear definitions for. The first of which is Pandora radio spins. So that's what you would expect when you listen to a song on any given station on Pandora. So that could be on an artist station like Beyonce, or that could be on a specific track station, Crazy in Love radio. Or lastly, that could just be on, best R&B now. So any spin that is happening on a station listening experience will be classified as a Pandora radio spin. As we move to the second metric in that list, Pandora interactive plays, this is what we are referring to when we talk about on-demand listening on Pandora. So that could mean a listener has a Pandora premium account, they wanted to listen to the new Ariana Grande album top to bottom, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're being kicked into that full album listening experience. We do also have premium access trials. So maybe if an artist is sharing a link to a new single on Pandora across their social media platforms, a listener might be kicked into that on-demand listening experience, and that would be another example of on-demand. And lastly, as an example, any playlist listening across these on-demand options would count as an interactive play. So to make it simple, interactive plays in this situation really mean on-demand. So if you take Pandora radio spins for any given artist, and Pandora interactive plays for any given artist. When you combine those two, that's when you arrive at what we all know to be Pandora streams. So that being said, we're here to talk about Next Big Sound as a vehicle for you all to really understand Pandora data and how an artist's music really lives on the platform. So for me, when I log in, this is what my dashboard looks like, because these are a number of the artists that I happen to be following. But for many of you that might be starting with Next Big Sound for the first time, you might be saying, okay, I want to access my specific artist's profile. So we have the search bar up top of the page that'll allow you to search for artists that are already being tracked in Next Big Sound, which once again is really hundreds and thousands of artists. So many of the artists will already have profiles within Next Big Sound, but let's say you're working with a developing artist or someone who was previously part of a band or group and is now going solo. You can actually create a new Next Big Sound profile for them by taking advantage of this additional option to add a profile. So if I would have typed in an artist name that didn't already exist in the database, you would be able to create a unique profile for them. So you've searched for your artist or you've created a new profile, and then what? You'll be landing on an artist page in Next Big Sound that has a whole list of items and a whole list of features for you to sift through. So something that I want to make sure we all know is that you want to make sure that you are really following the artists that you care about. So it's very different from following an artist on a social platform, but there are actually some similarities. So when you follow a given artist, number one, it'll add that artist to the dashboard I just showed you. So if you're constantly trying to check out data around your roster of artists, it'll be a really great way to centralize all of that in one place. Secondly, this will actually opt you in to receive weekly email reports every week. So something that we often find is that people are really interested in their artist data, but don't necessarily find themselves seeking an opportunity to come back to this dashboard all the time, or they don't necessarily remember to be tracking everything across all platforms. So this is a really good way to indicate to us that this is an artist you care about, so we can make sure that you get updates on those artists. And once again, this will be a place where you'll be able to see high-level metrics, not just about Pandora, but those social sources as well. And then lastly, following an artist will opt you into receiving noteworthy notifications for any artist you follow. So I know a lot of people get a little scared when they hear notifications because they're overwhelmed with either push notifications on their phone or a constant list of emails. But these notifications were built in a really smart way by data scientists, much smarter than I am, who were able to look at the data we have for any given artist and say, okay, we know what's normal for this artist. We know what we could expect for an artist of this size, even given some kind of incremental growth. But what we want to do is we only want to surface an increase that is noteworthy to you off of that weekly cycle. So if we see that an artist has been getting a pretty consistent number of artist station ads with a pretty consistent amount of growth, if we see something that is, 2.5 times more than what we would expect, we want to make sure that we are surfacing that to you so that you can remain alert and aware of all these things that are going on. So you might say, all right, well, this actually happened when my artist released new music or when we had a TV appearance. And that might actually align with your expectations, right? We expected to see a spike. But we have noticed that in tracking both Pandora data and social sources, that sometimes spikes occur that that artist team isn't fully aware of. So it can be really helpful to have that brought to your attention through these emails so that you can make sure to do your own investigations and capitalize on it while it's happening, instead of maybe doing a retrospective months later and wishing you had taken advantage of that opportunity. So follow your artists. For anyone who gets set up and claims themselves as an artist or a manager, you'll automatically be following that artist. But for a lot of the folks out there who are either third parties in the industry or work for a label, it's really important that you search for and follow those artists so that you can have everything squared away right from the beginning. Awesome. So let's move right into the different features and the different sections of a Next Big Sound profile, just so that we make sure we have a full understanding of what we're looking at. So on this slide, you'll see we're looking at overall Pandora audience. So this is telling us at a really high level what the data looks like for that artist over the last month. So unique listeners is likely what you would expect. This is the number of unique listeners who have heard any song by this artist over the last month. And then lastly, the number of streams that this artist has received over the last month as well. So this can be a really cool place to just sort of spot check and hover over that time series to say, okay, on what day did that spike occur? Is this something that makes sense to me, or is there something that I'd like to investigate further? So if you were on Maggie Rogers' team, you would not be particularly surprised by this information given the existence of new music, but it can always be something interesting to dive into further if you are seeking that extra context. Cool, so moving right along, this next section is really exciting. It's called Playlists and Discovery. So hopefully the toggle isn't too distracting for you all, but wanted to show you some of the interactivity that we have within this particular feature. And essentially, this is where you can see where fans are actually discovering and listening to that artist on Pandora. So we've talked about this prior, but as you know, there are a lot of different places for people to listen to a given artist on Pandora. It could be on a station, it could be on a playlist. And so we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting for you where those sources are so that you can get a feel for what that distribution looks like. So in this case, you can see the pie chart on the top shows about 17% of this artist's streams are coming from the artist's own station. So that's a super strong signal that listeners and fans on Pandora are actually coming to our platform and typing in that artist name. That second bucket, other Pandora stations, includes all of the other stations we have on platform, which include similar artists, which include larger genre stations like we have here, Pop Latino. So it's really where you're able to see where that artist's music has been programmed. And then lastly, we have that interactive plays bucket. So that's where we're able to see which playlists this artist might be spinning on and what kinds of on-demand sources when it comes to the album or the single people are really seeking out. Awesome. So moving right along, the next section we have on a Next Big Sound profile is weekly performance. So it's not just how many streams did we get this week, and we'll definitely show you that later on. But we found that a lot of people were asking us, how do I know if a listener actually likes what they're hearing? How do I assess engagement? And as you all now know, Pandora thumbs up is a really huge indicator of engagement for us, but because it's unique to Pandora, people didn't know exactly where to place themselves. Oh, I know I got this many thumbs. Is that good? Is that bad? How do I really know? So this was a feature that we built to let you know what would be an expected number of thumbs up for an artist of that size, so that you could see if you are over-indexing, under-indexing, or sort of landing somewhere in the middle as expected. So just to make sure that we're all clear on what we're looking at here, we're looking at the weekly performance section for Pandora, and this artist gets around 171,000 weekly radio spins. So given the massive amounts of data we have for artists at any given stage in their careers and of regular consumption, we're able to say that we would expect about a little over 2,000 thumbs up a week for an artist of this size. And here you can see the artist of interest is actually clocking in at 5.5 thousand thumbs up. So this is always a really interesting module to look at when assessing overall engagement, and also an opportunity for us to really understand if there might be a new opportunity for an artist to engage with their listeners and their fans. So we'll talk a bit more about what those tools are later, but this is definitely a module where you can help isolate those opportunities. And as we move along, you'll notice that this is one of those modules that does actually incorporate data from additional sources. So we're able to measure engagement across Pandora, Facebook, and Twitter. Once again, making sure that we're comparing this artist to other artists of a similar size on that platform. So it's a really interesting place to see where an artist's given strengths or weaknesses might be. Cool. Excuse me as I take my sip of water. But this next section is where we highlight all of those artists' chart appearances. So if I were to be looking at Dua Lipa's data, there would be a section where I was able to see any chart appearance on a Pandora chart. So some of you may already be getting our weekly emails, but for those of you that aren't aware, we actually power 3 separate charts for Pandora. So our first chart is a predictions chart. Here is where we surface artists that are an earlier stage of their career, and we're incorporating Pandora data as well as those socials to say, okay, we know what it takes for an artist to go on and achieve success on those Billboard charts. So let's take a few steps back and look at the trajectory of those successful artists and try to pinpoint additional artists at a slightly earlier stage. So the predictions chart is actually something that Dua Lipa had surfaced on back in 2015. So it's always really interesting to see when we were able to help identify some of these artists on the rise, way before an artist maybe gets their Best New Artist nom at the Grammys or something similar to that. But this is also something that's really exciting for an artist to wear as a badge of honor, especially since it may be at a point where they're not necessarily getting all of the press hits from everywhere. So we found that this is something that a lot of artists are really proud of, since they're able to sit amongst a lot of others that have gone on to see that kind of success. To make sure that you're all clear on the other charts that we do have, the Pandora Trendsetters chart is actually specific to one metric, and that is Pandora Artist Station ads. We found that a lot of times the first thing that someone will do on Pandora when they're trying to listen to a given artist is they'll type in that artist name and launch their station. So we make sure to exclude those big hitters, those legacy acts, or those artists that have been topping the charts for years, and focusing on a lot of those artists that are still growing at a really nice pace, that we're seeing a lot of awareness of across the platform. And then lastly, we have top spins. So this is likely what you would expect, but these are the 100 top tracks across Pandora, with a focus on new content that are spinning really well. So if any of the artists' profiles that you're looking at are for an artist that has made any of these charts, you'll notice that you can scroll through every appearance that artist has had thus far. Cool. So moving right along. This next feature actually shows you where your fans are in the US. So the cool thing about this map is we can actually interact with this a bit more than we used to be able to. So initially this map would strictly just show where you were receiving artist station ads. So we have listeners across the country, which ones have actually come to Pandora in the last month and actually launched that station for you. But over the last few months, we've improved this feature to have much more interactivity. So not only can you see artist station ads, but you can also just see overall streams. Where are people listening to your music throughout the country? And maybe you don't want to just look at the last month. Maybe you would want to expand or shorten that time range. We now have 3 preset options for you so that you can figure out if there were maybe tour dates that ended up causing a big bubble on your map, or maybe you realize that after hitting terrestrial radio in a certain market, more people are coming to our platform. But it's really interesting to see all of the different ways that you can really make sense of this geographic data. Also want to just take a second to stop right here. Some of you may have questions around, okay, what do the colors mean, or what does the size mean? So the circles that are the largest are the places where we're seeing the most amount of streams. So we're seeing the most amount of streams from those areas. But if you take a look at the legend, we have colors ranging from yellow to dark purple. And those dark purple areas are where we're actually seeing more listeners than we would expect streaming your music or launching that station. So we have so much data around where people are in the US and who is a Pandora listener. We want to make sure that we're not just telling you, okay, you have a lot of listeners in LA, that's amazing. Well, actually, maybe there's just a lot of people in LA. So the places where you're seeing that pink and dark purple are where we're seeing even more people than we would expect listening to your music and being loyal to you as an artist. Cool. So moving right along, this next section includes both Twitter and Pandora with a heavy emphasis on Pandora data. And here's where you can really see who your audience is on the platform. You can look at this as far as each metric goes. I often end up looking at that strongest demographic tile at the very top, and then looking at that distribution down below. You can see the split female to male, as well as the overall split from age bucket to age bucket. But we've seen a lot of people use this data to inform maybe brand alignment, to inform the type of artists that they might want to tour with. Sometimes we've seen that labels or artist managers want to make sure that an artist and their opener have the same audience. Other times they want it to be a little bit different so that they can capitalize on the audience that that other artist has. So both the audience map and the audience demographics sections are two of the sections that are actually reserved to artists, managers, or labels. So while the overarching unique listener number and the monthly streams numbers are available to anyone in Next Big Sound, we do still have some features that are proprietary to the artist or their specific teams. Awesome. So we are getting near the end. So thank you all for bearing with me as far as the data intensive part goes. We still have lots of exciting marketing tools to share with you, but this next section is the releases section. And this is what you would expect when you want to see your data or see data for a given artist. You're going to say, okay, I want to know how my tracks are performing. How many streams does this song have overall? But you can actually choose a number of different metrics from this dropdown to isolate something in particular you might want to access. So you can actually see thumbs up per track. You can see the number of on-demand or interactive plays per track. So here's where you would be able to do that. And we do offer a decent amount of interactivity in this table as well, since you can either change those date ranges around, or you can sort that by percent change or by total. So this is a really good place to look at all of that data alongside one another. And then the last two sections of reach and engagement really tell you across all of the sources that we're tracking how everything's going. So once again, that does include additional metrics like Wikipedia page views, Twitter followers, Songkick followers, even Facebook talking about this a little bit later. And here's where you can see what that week-to-week performance looks like. You can see where you track as far as percentile goes. So you might be saying, once again, I know how many Twitter followers I have, but is that a good amount of increase? Is that what I should be expecting for someone of my size? And here's where you can sort of do so at a high level. So a lot of you might be saying, okay, great, but I have a lot of ideas around how I want to manipulate this data myself, how I want to look at it, and I don't necessarily want to just look at it through the lens of a 28-day period of time or a 1-week period of time. So here's where I would urge all of you to navigate back to that home dashboard. So for any of you artists, managers, or labels that have already claimed an artist and have that Pandora affiliation, you'll notice that you'll have a number of options on that left sidebar for you to actually customize a report. So there are a few, but the one you'll see visualized here in the center is a graph. And I often like using graphs because we can see where those hills and valleys are quite easily to try to figure out if something's working, if something's happening for that artist. So the cool thing about this is you can actually layer those different metrics on top of each other. But I know a lot of people that work on the analytics side are used to Excel, they're used to looking at tables and doing their own analyses. So if that's how you feel comfortable, definitely urge you to do so. And reports like our community and content reports are going to be the type similar to the visual you're seeing on the right, where you can play around with an entire roster. You could select multiple artists, look at their Pandora data and their social data, and even if it's of interest to you, you could export it to Excel if you'd like. So any of these reports that you create that are customized, you'll be able to rename them to whatever you'd like and save them so that they'll actually be tacked on to the bottom of your dashboard. So for many of you that like to do any kind of weekly reporting, you'll be able to see all of that housed in one place. Whew. So I'm happy to see that there are many of you that have stuck around for the entire data portion of the webinar, which is always exciting to see as a data nerd. But to introduce the artist marketing platform, I'm going to talk really briefly about the tools that we have in our toolkit, like artist audio messages and featured tracks. And then we're going to kick it off to Heather for more information on our exciting new Pandora Stories option. So as a reminder, AMP is where you can really help to break new music and connect with fans. So in short, here's where you can take action. You just learned a lot of information around you or your artist. You've isolated where there might be some opportunities to take action. Here's where you can actually do so. So AMP is something that can be accessed on the web or on your phones. I know a lot of people based internationally are upset, as are we, that Pandora is currently solely available in the United States, but the AMP playbook and AMP is something that you can access from wherever you are. And for those of you that are based here in the US, you can get connected on your phone as well through the Pandora app and AMPcast. So now that you have a little bit of information around what we can actually do through AMP, I want to make sure that it's clear what some of those options are at a really simple level so that you can all go off and use your own creative ideas to make these come to life. So the first is artist audio messages. So here's a really cool feature that allows artists to speak directly to their fans. We've seen these used in a variety of different ways. Heather's going to talk about them a little briefly as well. But essentially, these can be used to introduce new music. So if you want to prime a listener to what they're about to hear, and you don't want them to say, wait, I don't know what this is, it's not what I was looking for, and move on, you can actually speak to them and say, hey, this is Brittany Holloway, and I wrote this new song for you when I was in Malibu. I can't wait for you to hear it. Give it a thumb up if you like what you hear. Anything similar to that, using the artist's own voice, which we've seen through the data really resonates with our audience because they love the opportunity to hear from that artist directly. It's a very different way to engage with your fans than just seeing a post in a given feed. Something really cool about artist audio messages is you can actually geo-target them. So as you saw, we have all of this data around where our listeners are actually listening to your music or launching that station. If you have tour dates coming up or if you have some kind of campaign, you can actually geo-target those messages and say, hey, New York, I'm playing at the Gramercy Theater and I'd love to see you at my show. Click here for tickets. So we would make sure that that message is only going to those listeners that are close by, giving those listeners a really personalized experience where you're able to capitalize off platform. So we want to make sure that this is a really full cycle experience. The next one I wanted to mention was our featured track option. So a lot of times people will ask us, what do I do with this new music that I want to promote? How can I promote it? I want to make sure that you know this is my focus track. This is really what I'm trying to push. So featuring a track is actually a way to accelerate accelerate feedback, because what we're doing is we're pushing that song into high gear. We already probably have some data around what type of audience you have, if you have a catalog on Pandora. And we do typically recommend a few weeks for a new song to be on the platform before triggering this feature. But after we have some data around who's thumbed it up, what stations it's performed well on, when you feature a track, it'll push it into higher gear so that it is spinning on a higher rotation for that period of time. So it's an 8-week period of time. And for any artist, you have the option to launch 6 of these per year. So oftentimes we notice that these are not utilized as much as they can be. We are essentially saying, hey, we want to spin this more so that we can get feedback from our listeners faster, so that we can find that organic home for that song quicker than we would have otherwise. So really, really exciting tool. I hope that most of you have already taken advantage of these if you are on the creator side of things. But with all that being said, I do want to kick it over to Heather, because Pandora Stories just went live and was just launched. So she is going to be the expert in-house to tell you all about it and what it can do for you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Great job, Brittany, on all of that amazing information. I am very excited to be talking to you guys today because we are just 48 hours after the original launch of this new suite of tools called Pandora Stories. Hopefully, if you are an AMP user, you got our announcement email on Tuesday, and hopefully, even if you are not an AMP user, you saw some of the press that we had going out on Tuesday. We had a lot of great coverage across a number of different publications talking about this new tool. So let's just dive right into it. I'm really stoked to tell you guys what we've got coming. So Brittany, let's do it. So just to review, we were just talking about artist audio messages, and artist audio messages were Pandora's first experiment with bringing the artist's voice onto platform, not just in the context of their music, but really allowing artists to speak directly to their fans and deliver the personal and promotional messaging that allows these artists to move their career forward. It's not just about, hey, this is an artist and I have more music on Pandora. It's really about, hi, this is me, and I have something to share with you, or I have something that I'd love for you to check out or interact with. And these messages have been wildly successful. They first began going out on Pandora, if we can believe it, in 2015, which is now 4 years ago. And in that time, we have amassed over 3 billion audio impressions on these messages. They've been heard over 3 billion times by our listeners, which is completely insane. And what's even more crazy than that is that even with such a high volume of messaging, we've maintained a really strong click-through rate between 1.5 and 2.5% that entire time. Right now, we are still looking at that strong click-through rate between 1.5% and 2%, and we're just finding through the listener data and through the overall listening data on platform that these messages are a really additive experience for our listeners. So we have a quick example to just listen to one of these before we move on.
Yes, Lord. This is Anderson Paak, and for more info on me or my album Malibu, just go ahead and press that little button on your screen. There you go. You can do it. You can do it. Yeah, right there. Yeah, there you go.
So that's obviously a really fun one, and that just shows how even in those 15 seconds, an artist can showcase their personality, they can deliver information to their listeners, and they can include a call to action. So through our learnings with artist audio messages over the last 4 years, we realized that there is a great opportunity to incorporate artist voice in an even greater scale. So we created, next slide, Pandora Stories, which at its core is a cross between playlists and podcasts. Playlists, as we all know, are a collection of music, and even if that music is programmed to a theme, you often find that the playlist lacks the connective tissue. It lacks that context. So, you know, it might be like, you know, songs about breakups, but who broke up? What is the subtext? Is there any private information about the artist in that song that was buried in there? You know, we don't get all that information. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have podcasts. And as I'm sure everyone on the call knows, even podcasts about music struggle to include the music themselves because licensing for podcasts is extraordinarily difficult. And we realized that here we are, Pandora, sitting on a fully licensed catalog of millions of tracks, and we have AMP. We have a platform for creators to come in and insert their voice into context. So with Pandora Stories, we allow creators to log into AMP, use our full catalog of licensed music to create a playlist, and then insert what we're calling voice tracks amongst that music to provide the storytelling aspects, to provide that context, that commentary, and the personal touch of storytelling. So I have another example for you here from the songwriter Dan Wilson talking about his work with Adele.
Adele and I met in a small studio in West Hollywood. She played me a whole bunch of clips by Wanda Jackson. You know, I had never started a session by listening to a bunch of rockabilly from 60 years ago. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And then she played me the first 4 lines of what we turned into Someone Like You. She was playing it on the guitar, and she said, oh, try it on the piano. Maybe it'll be more inspiring. So I did that arpeggiated thing on the piano. She claimed later that I kind of tortured her, that we worked harder than she wanted to. And I think I just felt like, no, that line isn't good enough. We got to do better. How about this? How about that? She had told me this really sad story about this breakup she had. So I was trying to help her honor that story. She came back the next day, and she said, oh, I played it for my manager and me mom. And I said, what did they think? And she said, my manager loves it, and me mom cried.
So, you know, that's a song that we all know so well just from being human beings on Earth. And there's a lot of opportunity to hear Adele maybe introduce that song. Perhaps it's at a live show and she's about to sing it, so she introduces it. Maybe she's on a late night show and it's a quick interview. But we don't often have an opportunity to, A, get a really in-depth story about individual songs, or B, hear the perspective of anybody other than the recording artist. And obviously, the recording artist has tons of interesting stories to share, but so do other people. And our goal here is to really provide the platform and opportunity to anyone who has a story to tell with music. Next one, Brittany. There we go. So what we're trying to share with the world are 3 distinct messages. For listeners, we're providing an exclusive streaming experience with completely unique commentary that provides that opportunity for an emotional connection. For creators, we want to give them a better way to tell their stories. They don't have to just do it through exclusively their music or through interviews. They can really create that combined experience. And then for the industry, we are creating an innovation in this music podcasting space where we are combining fully licensed catalog, fully licensed pre-existing catalog with creator-generated voice commentary. Very excited to be speaking to all 3 of these groups. Next one. So the next couple of slides we can just breeze through. These are just a look at what the tool itself looks like. So if anyone is already an AMP user, you see that this is within the normal AMP user interface. For each program that you make, for each unique story that you make, you can provide a title, a unique cover image for that story, description. You can choose the flight dates for it. Next slide. Apologies for the background noise. And then you sequence the music. You see on this screenshot here, there is a search field. You literally just type the name of the song you're looking for. Maybe you type the name of the artist, and then you search through their entire catalog. Then once you select tracks, you just drag and drop them into the sequence that you are looking for. It's very easy to use. Next one. And then when you want to upload your voice commentary, this looks very similar to what we already have existing for artist audio messaging. So you upload your voice file. We accept a number of file formats, MP3, MP4, M4A, and AIF. You can customize the photo, the image that appears on the screen while your message is playing. You can give that individual message a title, a call to action, and if you so choose, you can connect that piece of voice commentary to a specific song. So even if your playlist isn't playing straight through in order, that piece of commentary and that piece of music will always be played together. Next. Finally, you're able to assign browse tags and search strings to your Pandora story. So if you are creating a playlist that falls specifically within a certain genre, you can assign that genre tag, or maybe it's specifically for a holiday or a mood or an activity. You can give those tags, and then you can also freely type in search strings. So individual keywords or phrases that a listener might type into the search bar in Pandora that you want associated with your program. So you have a lot of control over availability. Obviously, if a listener types in the specific name of your program or your name or whatever it is, they can also be brought into your programs that way. Additionally, I believe the next slide has this, but additionally, each program also has a unique URL, which will pull you in directly. What we're looking at now is the listener experience. So if I'm a listener and I'm looking in Browse, here in my featured playlist section, I see that there is this little talking head icon. That's indicating that this playlist has that additional voice context. Then you see in the middle, when I click into the program, I see the music tracks interspersed with the spoken tracks, and the spoken tracks again have that little icon, and then there on the now playing screen, that icon is present again on a voice track. So there's a lot of visual cues for when the listener is getting that additional voice commentary. Next. And of course, it wouldn't be us, it wouldn't be Pandora, AMP, and Next Big Sound if we weren't giving you a ton of data. So each program also has unique metrics that show you how many listeners are interacting with your story, how many times has the music been spun, how much time are they spending listening to your voice commentary. And then on each individual track, we also have things like completion rates, skip rates, click-throughs on those voice tracks. So a lot of really rich metrics for you again. And here, this little box on the screen is just highlighting where you can click to copy the unique URL into your story so that you can share it off of platform as well. Next. Basically, the message that we're trying to deliver here is that we are expanding the offering of AMP beyond what it's ever been in the past. Historically, you had to have a direct connection to a recording artist with music on Pandora in order to take advantage of AMP. Now, with these new tools, if you are a songwriter or a producer or a publisher, even if you're a filmmaker or a celebrity or a chef or a podcaster, these new tools give you an opportunity to become a creator on Pandora because you have a story to tell with music, and therefore you have a valid voice in the conversation to create Pandora stories. Next one again. This is sort of just a slide for you guys to review when we send around later, but we've identified a number of different categories for creators that help sort of steer the conversation from a listener perspective of, you know, oh, I'm a really avid gamer and I want to see maybe some of my favorite gamers or streamers have created some of these programs. So we just kind of help guide listeners to those categories. Next. And finally, we've also in-house started to develop some creative concepts, which are basically creative blueprints. It's a starting point for a story. For example, if I'm an artist, one example that we have in the format that we've been using is an artist Z to A. So it's a retrospective of that artist's work with them telling stories from their career, but it's not just like, here's a track by track of my newest album. Because while that is interesting, it's not necessarily encompassing of all of the information that a fan wants to know about that artist. Another example is if I'm a music supervisor, maybe I want to walk through the title tracks from each of the films that I've worked on and how we came to select that particular song for that particular use case. So on the next slide, we just have a couple of these examples that we've created in-house of different artists we've worked with, different creators, and the 5 categories that we're starting off with. There's a lot more to come on this, but this is just what I've been calling our opening bid. It's our starting point for our creative concepts. Next. Finally, how do you get started? As always, we have resources for you guys. Our general AMP support team, amp-support@pandora.com, is well-versed, and we also have a subset of that team called creator support, creator-support@pandora.com, that can specifically help you with any questions you have about Pandora Stories. If you're interested in getting started with Pandora Stories, you can fill out the request form. It will be linked in the document that we will share with you guys after this presentation, but it's on the AMP playbook. So if you just go to ampplaybook.com, you'll see that there's all kinds of new information there about Pandora Stories, including the form to request access. So with that, I will stop. I want to make sure that we have a few minutes for questions here at the end. So just check out ampplaybook.com, reach out to our teams if you need us. And Brittany, I believe you are going to be leading our question section.
I will. Thank you so much, Heather. Super excited that we can now talk about this and see what everyone's going to have in store as far as their own creative ideas go. So yeah, to Heather's point, these are going to be the two main email addresses that you should keep in mind if you have questions about either Next Big Sound or AMP, but we have a few minutes to start answering some of those now. So one of the questions that we received was, how does one go about verifying that they are with the artist or their team to unlock the full information? So that verification step does actually happen within AMP as the initial step. So Heather, if you want to just chime in on that briefly.
Absolutely. So when a potential AMP user creates their AMP account, we have a couple of verification steps. The simplest version is to associate your account with a verified Twitter. If you do have a verified Twitter, then that's just a one and done. Twitter has verified you, therefore we verify you. If you don't have a verified Twitter, that is no problem at all. Our AMP support team will reach out to you and find a different means of verification. As a little preview, some of that usually the go-to is to email the AMP support team from the email listed on the artist's website, if the artist has an official website. If that's not an option, we have a number of other ways that we verify your identity. Once that's done, we actually, as Brittany mentioned, have a way to connect your AMP account with your Next Big Sound account, which will automatically link that verified information, and then you'll be able to see the proprietary data.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. Another question we have, if we're distributed via an aggregator or via Merlin, can we as a label have access to these stats? So short answer is yes, we can absolutely make sure that you have access to this data. You would actually go through a similar process to what Heather mentioned through that claiming page in AMP, where you'd be able to indicate to us what your relationship to that artist is. So you could say, hey, we're an indie label. And then that way you'll be set up in AMP with the relevant access. And then that'll actually be kicked over to myself or one of my colleagues so that we can make sure to grant you access to all of the content that would come through that aggregator's feed with your label name on it. So we're definitely happy to help get you set up if you are using one of those aggregators.
Just to add to that really fast, we have weekly working relationships with all of the aggregators, the distributors, and Merlin. So if you ever have any questions about that entity's relationship with Pandora, with these tools, you can always reach out to them. But often the fastest way to get the simple information is amp-support@pandora.com, or within AMP, there's also a chat feature. You'll see a chat feature down in the, there's a chat bubble down in the bottom right corner. You can always reach out to our team that way, but absolutely you have access to all of these tools.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great extra context, especially if you have a lot of different artists on your roster. It can often be faster just to list all of those out so we can get you squared away from the beginning. Cool. So another question / comment. It seems this person's asking, are there any plans to allow artists to have a public-facing artist profile that they can really drive or own? So the answer for this is different depending on if we're talking about AMP or Next Big Sound. The way it currently works in Next Big Sound is that your artist image and your artist name are initially pulled from those connected social sources you have. So that could be Facebook or Twitter. And in order to make a change to either one of those, you do right now need to use support@nextbigsound.com so we can get that squared away for you. Within AMP, you are able to edit your photo through the AMP dashboard, but I know that we do have plans to make even more things available to be customized by you, since we do have that verification. So coming soon, we hope that that's an even smoother process going forward, but everything can be changed if that is the necessary change. It just is a little bit more of a back and forth now than we plan to have in the future. Another question, do you recommend using the same geographic setting for all artist audio messages? So I'm happy to take this at first, but Heather, feel free to chime in as well. Oftentimes, the artist audio messages being recorded aren't necessarily specific to any particular region. So if you want to talk to your fans, you have something to tell them, you're maybe telling them a story about the song, or you're letting them know about something that's coming up, maybe a new album, that isn't something that needs to be specific to any given region, so you can just have that message played anywhere. It's often when you are trying to promote a specific tour date in a specific market that you would take advantage of that geo-fencing. Do you agree with that, Heather?
Yes. To put it simply, artist audio messages will reach all of your listeners in the United States unless you choose to target a specific demographic or geographic, and that is entirely in your control. The Next Big Sound information will help indicate where your strongest audiences are, but not geo-targeting your message will always reach the biggest audience, because that's everyone.
Totally. Cool. So that brings us to the end of our hour, but either of these email addresses is fully manned by people that are happy to answer your questions. I would recommend taking a look at that AMP playbook, because that is the one-stop shop resource for information across data, marketing tools, stories, you name it. But thank you all for staying tuned and learning about all of the tools that we have here, and we're looking forward to getting even more of you on board so that you can start using them.
Thanks, everyone.
Brittany and Heather, thank you. And we hope to have you back on the Common Ground webinar series soon as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will see you hopefully again next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.